Hi friends, welcome back to the homestead. I'm Heather Hicks, the site manager, and today I've got an extra special treat for you. Our former director and children's book author, Amanda Bowman Machik, is going to read to us from her storybook, Daniel Boone's Boyhood Adventures in Colonial Pennsylvania. So get ready to learn more about Boone's boyhood here in the Olive Valley. Enjoy!
Daniel Boone's Boyhood Adventures in Colonial Pennsylvania. Welcome, son, to my childhood home, the Olive Valley. This place was very diverse when I was a child and was considered by many to be the edge of the frontier. Everything west of us was uncharted territory. Several Native American tribes called this area home. The local Lenape and Shawnee knew the land well, and we respected their way of life. I spent much of my time exploring the nearby woods. As a small child, I learned skills for my future adventures, including trapping and hunting animals. I grew up with 10 brothers and sisters in a small log cabin. The families that lived in the house after we left made changes to it, so it no longer looks exactly like it did when I was a boy. When my father decided we were moving to North Carolina in 1750, he sold his land to William Moggridge. Mr. Moggridge had lived in Philadelphia and was friends with Dr. Benjamin Franklin. After moving to the Olive Valley, Mr. Moggridge eventually became a local judge in Berks County. I remember this cold, damp place very well. This is the spring cellar that my father built underneath our log cabin. The spring water down here stays cold all year long. This is where your grandmother kept her fresh milk and cheese. She also used the cellar to preserve fruit and root vegetables that she grew in our large gardens. We used these clay crocks and large barrels to store the food. We had to go outside the cabin to get to the spring cellar because there were no stairs inside going down to the cellar. My family also used the spring water for washing clothes, cooking, and taking a bath. Not all of our neighbors had spring cellars. Depending on the location of the water, some had spring houses nearby their houses. Although this house does not look exactly like it did when I lived here, my mother and sisters used the kitchen the same way it is used now. They would wake up before sunrise to begin preparing the day's meals. In the dark kitchen, they would light the fire and use candles to help them see as they busied themselves with the morning chores. My mother used Dutch ovens and spider skillets to cook the food, just like your mother does at home. The ovens and skillets had little legs that raised them up off the floor, allowing hot coals to be put underneath them to heat the food inside. They would also place hot coals on the lid of the Dutch oven. Our family would eat a big meal around midday and then have a smaller meal in the evening, sometimes eating leftovers. When I was a young boy, the smallpox epidemic made people very sick and caused red spots to appear all over your body. There was no medicine available to us to help us with this sickness, so to prevent the disease from spreading, people who were healthy were not allowed to go near people who were sick. Many of our neighbors were ill, so my mother did not let my sister and me leave the house to play because she did not want us to get sick. This made us very sad. I loved the outdoors so much, and I quickly grew tired of being inside. To cure our boredom, we came up with an adventurous plan. Elizabeth and I thought that the sooner we got sick, the sooner Mother would let us go outside and play. If we could catch the smallpox quickly and then get better, Mother would not keep us inside any longer. We knew that some of our neighbors had smallpox and that if we could get close to them, we would get sick too. One night when we were supposed to be sleeping, we snuck over to their house and climbed into bed with them. Elizabeth and I returned home before sunrise and acted as though nothing had happened. After a few days passed, red spots began appearing on our skin, and Mother soon figured out what we had done. We got scolded, but our plan worked, and before we knew it, we were back outside to play. Your grandfather was a weaver and a blacksmith. As a weaver, he had several large looms that he used to weave thread into cloth. These looms were far too large to keep inside our small log cabin, so he stored them in a separate building nearby our house. My mother and sisters spun the thread that my father wove into cloth. They used plant and animal fibers to make the thread. My family used a plant called flax to make linen cloth and sheep's wool to make heavy, warm woolen clothing. My sisters and mother had to clean the wool. My brothers and I prepared the flax before it could be spun into thread. Our neighbors also brought their thread to my father, and he would weave it into cloth for them too. My father had many skills. As a blacksmith, he had a shop nearby our house with a forge where he made different items that we used around the farm. He made nails, hinges for windows and doors, and horseshoes. He also produced many of the kitchen utensils my mother and sisters used. Just like he wove our neighbor's cloth, my father made iron objects and tools for them as well as for our family. First, he would heat the iron in the forge until it was very hot. Then he would place the hot iron on an anvil and pound it with a large hammer, molding it into different shapes. The floor of the blacksmith shop was dirt, so if a hot ember fell on the ground, it would not catch fire. Blacksmithing was hard and hot work, especially in the summertime when the weather was already very warm. Since blacksmithing was such demanding work, my father found an apprentice or assistant to help him in his shop. An apprentice learned a specific trade or skill from an expert, and my father's blacksmithing apprentice was a boy named Henry Miller. Henry was just a few years older than I was. Soon after Henry began working with my father, he and I got into a fight over something silly, but after that, we became best friends. We spent time hunting, fishing, and playing jokes on neighbors and family members. We also occasionally went on daring adventures, though our parents did not always approve. My siblings and I were not allowed to attend dances or parties because of our religion. My parents were English Quakers and very strict. They had a lot of rules for my brothers, sisters, and I, but one night Henry and I decided we were going to sneak out to go to a party. We borrowed my father's horse and traveled to a nearby town to join the festivities. On the way home, we decided to take a shortcut through the pasture filled with cows. There was one cow lying down, sleeping, and we thought it would be exciting to jump the horse over the cow. It was great fun. My favorite memories here as a boy are from the summers. My mother and I would travel a few miles north of our home where my father kept his cattle. There we lived in a log cabin in the woods all summer long. I watched over the animals and took care of them while my mother milked the cows and made butter and cheese. Once a week, we would carry the milk, butter, and cheese back to our family spring cellar. As much as I loved this time with my mother, I greatly enjoyed roaming the woods and exploring the forests. Once I became so distracted during my adventure that I forgot I was supposed to be helping my mother with the cows. I was gone for several days until a search party found me. My mother thought I was lost, but I knew where I was the entire time. I was on an adventure, tracking a bear. This was not the first time I had disappeared, nor would it be the last. I always also wandered throughout the Flying Hills, the Ole Hills, and the Never Sink Mountains, all close by my home. When I was almost 13 years old, I received my first gun. I practiced my shooting and became very good at it. Before I had a gun, I tracked animals and used a carved stick to hunt rabbits, squirrels, possums, and wild turkeys. My family and I relied on animals not just for food, but also for clothing and other household items. Our last place to visit, Nathan, is the Exeter Friends Meeting. In the Ole Valley, people practice many different religions. My parents were English Quakers, and my family attended this meeting house, located just a few miles from our home. The Friends used the meeting house as their place of worship. Quakers had to follow many rules, and members were expected to marry people of the same faith. Both my brother and my sister married people who were not of our religion. The meeting did not approve of these marriages, and this caused some bad feelings between my father and the other local Quakers. I think this was one of the reasons our family left the Ole Valley. And that is the end of the story.
Yay!
Yay! I hope you enjoyed our story time. To learn more about the Daniel Boone Homestead and our educational and video offerings, please check out our website, thedanielboonehomestead.org, or our social media at the Daniel Boone Homestead. We look forward to bringing history home and sharing more of the story of the colonial Ole Valley. See you later!